All right. Well, yes, Dave introduced me earlier. My name is Alex. I've known Dave, man, it's been, I met him in high school. He was my youth minister for my last year of high school, and thankfully God has blessed me, and he stayed a part of my life ever since. And so I do thank him for the opportunity to get up here today and share some things with y'all. So for those who weren't here last week or just who need a little refresher, goodness knows I do sometimes. Last week, we began to look at the story of David and Goliath. And last week, Dave spoke about that story, and we looked at it in terms of discontent and the value of discontent in our lives. Now, there are some things, specifically material things, like what we have, how much we have, or how little we have, that we are supposed to be content with. You know, the world tells us you should want this. You need this. Your life will be better if you have this. But hopefully by now we've all experienced the kind of that slap in the face moment where you didn't get that thing and you were either fine or you're even better off when you were able to look away from material things and say, wow, look at how much I already have. And so just that sense of contentment with material things, but discontent with spiritual things. To look around and say, well, you know, things may not be terrible right now, but they could be better. Or maybe there is something that's been weighing on your heart, something that the Spirit is trying to convict you of. And you finally start listening to that little voice, that rock in your shoe. You finally decide, wow, this isn't killing me, but it's not right either. It's not comfortable. Something's wrong, and something needs to be done. So this week, we're going to continue to look at the story of David and Goliath. And we're going to look at it through the lens of commitment. So whereas last week, discontent, starting to look around and say, something needs to change. So that's great. It's good to recognize that, but without commitment, you don't go anywhere. You stay in the same place, and the status quo, it stays as is. Because we know if we don't take action, things don't just change by themselves. Or sometimes they do change, and it gets worse. Like if we stand still, we move backwards because everything else keeps going. So this week, we're going to look at commitment, how we can move forward and say, I need to make a change. How can I do it? So for me, in preparing for this lesson, one thing, a comparison that seemed relevant was working out. So I don't know if you can all see me pretty well. Nobody's going to mistake me for a bodybuilder or an exercise freak, a health nut, whatever you want to call it. I'm not that guy, and that's okay. But at the same time, I've realized, after college, you graduate, you get a job, or you may just get a job straight out of high school, and you start working, and that's your life. Like, you go to work, you're at home, and it started to occur to me, man, I don't need to be Mr. Olympia, but I'm not healthy. Like I don't just have tons of energy doing menial tasks. Like just say a friend calls, hey man, can you help me move some stuff on Saturday? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. And at the end of the day, you think to yourself, gosh, that was probably a lot harder than it should have been for someone who's 28 years old, for example. I shouldn't be this tired going up flights of stairs. Just little things like that, it's the status quo. And I started looking at it, thinking, well, I live 5 minutes away from the YMCA. I know I have friends who exercise is a big part of their life. What's stopping me from doing something about this? And so thankfully, Dave, at the same time, I guess he'd also been having similar stirrings. And so we said, all right, let's do this. Let's try to make this a habit. And I'll admit, that's been probably a year and a half ago, give or take. And it hasn't been consistent every day. I'm not there 7 days a week, although that's not my goal. There are some weeks, sometimes even a month will go by, and I think, man, what happened? How have I not exercised in a month? Gosh. But by and large, things are so much different now than they used to be. And now I look at exercise. Whereas, say in college, when you're surrounded by people who I went to Texas A&M, and well, anywhere you go, you're surrounded by people who are in the peak physical shape of their life. College athletes, like they're getting ready to go pro. They're working out every day. They're eating. And here I am, man, this video game's really going well. Like, yeah, I know the rec is there and it looks like fun, but later. So anyway, enough about that. So yes, Dave and I talked and we decided, yes, let's try this. And I'm thankful to say that by and large, it's worked. Like now, I look at exercise as something I get excited about. Like when I miss a week of going to the Y, I think, oh, man, I don't feel right. I got to get back. I gotta sweat a little bit. And I'm very thankful for that sense of discontentment that started it all, but for the sense of commitment that got me from there to here. So the theme of this series is champions. And in talking about commitment, one of the little zingers or what have you, commitment separates the well-wishers from the champions. I could still be at home playing video games all the time, never going to work out. And that would probably be all right. It wouldn't, like I say, it wouldn't kill me. I mean, eventually, heart disease, things like that, it will catch up. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And yet, here I am, and I'm so thankful that rather than just being one of those people who, yeah, maybe someday I'll get on the workout train, I'm quasi on it. It's a regular part of my life, and I'm so thankful. And so now that I've kind of shared that personal side of how I viewed this lesson, we'll take a look, jump back into 1 Samuel chapter 17, and today our passage is going to be verses 28 through 40. Take a look at David and how he went from discontent to commitment. So verse 28, now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you've come down to see the battle. So to a quick flashback, so it mentions Eliab heard when he spoke to the men. So now what David was saying, where we left off last week, he had arrived at the camp where the armies were, and they were on two sides of a valley. And when he arrived, he saw this giant, a literal, I think he was over 9 feet tall, it's estimated, who for 40 days prior to David's arrival, every day he would come out, get right in the face of the Israeli army, and basically shout them down, say, someone come test me. Come fight me. Let's settle this. You send one person, and I'm here. We don't need to have a huge battle. Let's do this. One of you and me. For 40 days. And so David arrives, and when he hears this, he begins asking around. I think immediately it seemed like he had that little spark of discontent. And so he started asking the men, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? So he started asking around. As soon as he shows up on the scene, here's this guy basically talking trash. And so he starts asking around, what will be done for the man who goes out and faces this foe? And moreover, who does he think he is? So his oldest brother, the oldest of 8, hears him. And as soon as he hears that David, he hasn't made any grand proclamations, he doesn't just run up and say, give me a weapon, I'm ready, I'll do it now. He's just asking questions, that's it. And as soon as his brother hears this, he gets in his face and says, whoa, what do you think you're doing? I know what's in your head, what's in your heart. You're just here to see the battle. Get out of here. And so a few things we want to consider tonight in relation to commitment. Here we see commitment may find resistance. And in this case, the resistance was external. It came from David's brother Eliab. And oftentimes, external commitment can either arise from misunderstanding, sometimes jealousy or envy. In this case, I like to think it was a misunderstanding. Eliab he didn't have any ill will towards his brother. He just thought, no, your heart's in the wrong place. You're just a kid and you're just excited about this battle. You want not a front row seat, but you want to watch and see it unfold. No, be gone. Now, there are some times where external resistance arises from jealousy or envy. I know I'll be the first to admit, there have been times where family, friends, people I love, care about, would do anything for. They'll say, I've decided to do this. I've decided I'm gonna start working out all the time, or I'm gonna start eating better. Just, we've all heard these resolutions. New Year's is a popular time to start waving things around like this. And sometimes when I hear it, I think, as soon as I hear them say that, just a little voice inside my head says, well, yeah, what makes you so special? Why are you gonna do that? And keep in mind, this is family, friends, people I love, people I would drop everything for in a heartbeat. But just instinctively, I hear them say something, and that little voice, that little green monster, just starts whispering. And so, one external source of resistance can also be failure. Although I think failure is super important. I've heard it said, basically, if you don't ever fail, you can't learn how to succeed. Like, success comes from encountering failure and learning what to do differently next time. For example, with the weights, like lifting weights is my main thing. Cardio, the treadmill. At some point, I'm gonna have to incorporate that, but for right now, I'm just one step at a time, one thing at a time. So lifting weights, I love it. There have been times, though, where we'll try a new exercise, some new movement that we read about in an article, and I just can't do it. Either I can't do it, or I'll try it and, oh man, that felt terrible. I don't want to do that again. And so rather than just accepting that and saying, I'll never do it again, we go read more articles, see, okay, what mistake am I making? How am I supposed to do this? Maybe there's some technique that I don't know about. And more often than not, I think we have yet to encounter anything that we haven't overcome the obstacle of a new challenge, a new exercise. A big one, especially with working out, is a great example of internal resistance, because I would say 99% of the time, when I'm exercising, up here quits way before any of this quits. Like, my arms, legs, whatever, theoretically could go all day if nothing told them to stop. But up here, as soon as I think, oh man, I don't think I can do another one, I'm done. I can go ahead and try, but if I've started to quit up here, if doubt has entered my mind, you might as well just hang it up, move on to the next thing, try again next time. So doubt can be, and I think we've all experienced doubt, it can be one of the devil's most powerful tools to keep you from doing anything. If there was one bullet in his gun that he could use on you every time to keep you at the status quo, it would be doubt. Because it's so quick to set in, and it can come from so many different places, especially inside ourselves. So we see commitment may find resistance. Now we'll keep reading, and we'll see how David responded to this resistance from his brother. And David said, "What have I done now? Was it not but a word?" And he turned away from Eliab toward another and spoke in the same way. And the people answered him again as before. Now here we see David was focused on his goal. And commitment should be focused on a goal. Rather than engaging his brother, getting angry, flying off the handle, saying, "Whoa, back up." He didn't take the time to argue. He just calmly said, "What did I do wrong? I'm just asking questions. I just barely got here. What did I do wrong?" He didn't even say that many words. I've already said 5 times as much as what he said. And just calmly turns to the next guy, the next soldier, and keeps asking his questions, keeps asking, so what will be done for the man who goes forward and faces this foe? And who is this person that he would challenge the armies of the living God? So commitment is focused on the goal, and we see that David is focused on his goal. Now, focus, it helps us push through resistance because resistance is inevitable. Honestly, if there were no resistance, everything would come easily and it wouldn't be worth doing. And so when resistance does come, you might have heard the expression, keep your eyes on the prize. If you can keep in mind at times of resistance why you're there and why you're doing what you're doing, it makes it that much easier to push through and say, well, I'm not giving up. I mean, yeah, it's hard, or I might have even failed. I might have got knocked right on my butt, but I'm not giving up. I know what I came here to do. I still want to do that. Maybe, if you're one of those who's uniquely motivated, that might make you want to do it even more. You might be even more fired up from that failure than before. So we see the commitment is focused on the goal. And one quick note that I jotted down earlier, in making commitments and in setting goals, it's so important. I can't emphasize this enough. Be honest with yourself. Be honest about where you're starting, where you really want to go, and what it's going to take to get there. Now, there's nothing wrong with setting lofty goals. That's great. But don't just set that goal and not think about where you're really starting out. No one says, I'm going to climb that mountain. That's my goal. Thinking to themselves, well, I only have about 10 feet to go. They can see where they are in relation to the mountain. They can see where they are in relation to their goal. And it's so important to be honest with where you're starting and where you are along the way. And speaking of being honest, so here we go. We'll keep reading. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Commitment is worth sharing. And when I thought about this, two main points came to mind. The value of sharing commitments, accountability and encouragement. So we just talked about being honest. It's easy for us to lie to ourselves. I do it all the time. And it's just little lies like, oh, you can skip going to the gym today. It'll be fine. Like you're real busy. Who has the time? Or, oh, my nose ran a little bit. Like I had to blow my nose once when I got out of bed. Today's probably not a good day. It's so easy to tell ourselves those little lies. But when we share our commitments with other people, not just anybody, don't go telling strangers on the street, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to win an Olympic medal. Because that's not worth anything, because those people don't stand to hold you accountable or encourage you. But when you tell friends, family, people who are invested in your success and who genuinely love you, when you share these commitments with them, now they may have that little voice of envy, jealousy initially. Like I said, sometimes it happens to me. But, that's just the initial knee-jerk reaction. Once they actually stop to think about it, they think, wow, yeah, I would love to see this person succeed. I would love to see them reach that goal. And for you to offer them a chance to help you get there, that makes them feel good. Trust me, I can't tell you how many times with working out and also spiritual things like reading my Bible, praying, how many times it's made a difference for Dave to say, just send me a text in the morning and say, hey, did you read? Or in the afternoon and say, hey, did you make it to the gym today? It's great. And now there are days where I kind of have to kick myself and say, no, I made excuses. And I tell him that because I know he genuinely wants me to succeed. But yes, so we see commitment is worth sharing. People keep you accountable, they encourage you. And also, to bring Dave back in, he may leave me to my own devices for a few weeks as far as exercise goes, and then after a while he'll ask me, hey, you been working out lately? How's everything going? And it's those little benchmarks where the honesty carries us forward. And we can say, nope, you know what? I failed. Let's redouble our efforts and get back in there. Or even better, I've been succeeding. Let's keep it up. Let's take this momentum and just fire on through. And so on that note of accountability, we'll keep reading. And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go up against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father, and when there came a lion or a bear and took the lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Commitment builds on past success. Now, when you first start out, this might be a little more difficult. You haven't experienced any success on this current journey, in this current track. Thank you. So you might have to think of other instances in your lives where you set a goal and were successful. Or this might be where the encouragement, if you're having trouble getting started, you might need to share with somebody, "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I want to do this." And they might be able to give you that nudge to get started. But it builds on past successes. And you see at the end of that passage, Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." One thing I constantly forget about and am guilty of is not including the Lord in my plans. Like, I'll have this grand idea. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to be working out regularly. And I think, well, what does that have to do with God? That's my thing. Not trying to keep it from him, but God doesn't care about my working out. Well, yeah, you could say that, but on the other hand, is my body not his temple and the temple for his spirit? And moreover, is my body even really my own? Was he not the one who created me and designed me, made me what I am, the way I am? I belong to him. Now, I don't have to acknowledge that, but it sure would help if I say, "God, you're my heavenly Father. I want to do this thing. I want to get in shape. I want to start reading my Bible more regularly. Please help me with this." When we talked about worth sharing, it's great to share with people, but if you're sharing with everyone and not sharing with God, eventually you're going to hit a wall, probably inside yourself. That's going to be that internal resistance that you're not going to know how to get past, because we're not meant to do these things alone. We're meant to rely on God because, we live in a fallen world and we are broken people, and that brokenness comes through from time to time, especially when we're trying to do something to grow closer to God or to advance his kingdom. The devil sees that and it's like, let me pull you right off that track. I want to make you doubt yourself. I'm going to keep you from doing this. All right, so moving on. And he tried in vain. Yep, start at the start of these notes. Okay. Then Saul clothed David with his armor. He put a helmet of bronze on his head and clothed him with a coat of mail, and David strapped his sword over his armor. And he tried in vain to go, for he had not tested them. Then David said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them." So David put them off. As I was looking at a little bit of the backstory, it mentions Goliath and the armor he was wearing. I think it said his body armor alone weighed around 120 pounds, which is mind-boggling to me to think about. When I used to be in school, my backpack would weigh 15 pounds, and at the end of the day, I'm like, oh my back kind of hurts. I need to lay down. And this guy, he's 9 feet tall, his armor weighs 120 pounds, and here David is trying on his armor and thinking, nope, you know what, I'm not used to wearing this stuff. I'm going to go without it, which I'm sure to the soldiers he was standing next to just seemed nuts. But at the same time, that brings us to commitment is unique to you. No one knows exactly where you are in your life, apart from God. None of the soldiers that stood next to David, they could encourage him all day long or try to reason with him, say, no, you can't go without your armor. but they didn't know what was in his heart, in his head. They didn't know his journey. So at the end of the day, commitment is unique to you. In terms of uniqueness, Dave mentioned the survey that we're going to look at afterwards. You hear in Scripture the church referred to as the body of Christ. Obviously, it's been a long time since I took high school science, but we're all familiar with the body. It's got lots of different parts, but they all work together. You take away one part, the functionality of the body, it won't be the same. It's not right. It can't do what it's supposed to do when you take away pieces. And just like that body, we're all parts of that body. Now, some of us may be hands. We may be all about action and serving and just, the mission trip people, the ones who they can build anything. And that's just, it's so clear that they're handy. That's their gift. They're hands. Some people are mouths. They're meant to spread the word. But it's important to recognize that commitment is unique to you. Whatever you want to do, when you face resistance, internal or external, recognize that it's okay if what you're doing, if people don't understand it, because it's unique to you. That's one of the best times to talk to God and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I want to do this thing, and I want to do it in your name, but I'm having a problem. I'm not sure how to handle it. Because only He can truly know where you are along your journey and in relation to where you want to be. And finally, we'll continue with David. So he's put off the armor. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. All right, it's game time. So commitment, we see here, steps into action. We talked about working out, exercise. When you set a goal, research is great, and it's great to take time and plan small steps along the way to, no one becomes a champion overnight. Whoever's going to win the Super Bowl next week, they didn't do it in one game. They did it over the course of a season, and they took it one step at a time. They couldn't do it any other way. Your champion weightlifters, they didn't do that overnight. That was a lifelong thing for them. They're still, even once they've competed and won or not won, they have a lifelong commitment to physical fitness. And so, all that to say, at some point, they had to stop thinking and step into action. David could have stood there all day, asked every single soldier in the army, hey, so what will be done for the man who slays this Philistine? Who is he? And move on to the next guy. He could have spent his entire day doing that, and that's okay. It's good to know what you're up against, but at some point, you have to step forward. Michael Phelps could be the most knowledgeable person about swimming in the entire world, and if he never got into the pool, he's never going to win a medal. You could read all of the books on swimming, exercising, dieting. You could do years of research, and then once you step into action, you're like, whoa, knowing is different than doing. And at some point, you have to step forward and step into action. So on that note, I'll go ahead and close this in prayer, and then Dave will come and we'll look at these surveys. Dear God, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for your word that you breathed into existence so long ago, your truth that you handed to us to help us understand how to grow closer to you and how to advance your kingdom here on earth. And part of that, as we looked at last week, starts out with saying, things are not the way they should be. As believers, that's so important that we don't just sit back and say, yeah, things are pretty good. Let's just stay here. You constantly call us and convict us and speak through your spirit that lives within us. You're constantly urging us to step out, take action and make change. And so I just pray that this week and from here on out, that you will help all of us to not only be discontent with our spiritual status quo, but to remember these things and look at the story of David and remember what commitment is all about, the ins and outs, and how to go to you and increase our chances of success in making commitments that lift up your name and bring us closer to you. So I thank you once again. Thank you for bringing everyone here for this time to get together, worship earlier with music, and look into your word. And it's in your Son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.